What up, Long Beach? Welcome back to another episode of Long Beach Sports Talk, and we're taking this thing serious, because it's a league game, Smokey. As always, I am co-sports editor JJ Fiddler to my right.
Co-sports editor Mike Gardabasio, a.k.a. Smokey, and to my right,
Tyler Hendrickson, just a dude out here abiding. And we got to give thanks to our sponsors, Naples Rib Company and Papalucci's down on 2nd Street. They put the E in 2nd Street. That's what we like to say. So shout out to them for making this show and everything we do possible.
This is going to be a quick hits episode. Going to try to get as many teams in this episode as we possibly can, but we have got to start with Game O' the Week, because it's on ESPN.
Game of the Year.
It is St. John Bosco, it is Bishop Gorman, and it is in Las Vegas. So we are going to take crab cakes in football and introduce it to betting in football. We have got Maryland's own Chris Trevino in the house, and he's about to hit the road for the first time, right? Vegas, baby. Vegas.
I think that's your best intro to date, JJ. I just want to point that out there. I don't know how we should talk about this game because it doesn't feel like a high school game. To be candid, this feels like a college game on a different level. But yes, I'll be hitting the road, going up there to catch the, as you said, the game of the week between Bishop Gorman and Bosco, and it should be a good one.
Now, give us the itinerary. You drove across the country, right? So this isn't really a big deal for you.
Yes, I drove across the country in about 3 days, so this is kind of a cakewalk. This is a trip to the grocery store.
Oh, famous last words, as some of us Southern California natives know. But you're right, this game does feel like a college game, more because the majority of the guys on the field are getting a lot of college attention already.
Absolutely. I mean, just on Bishop Gorman's side, I mean, they've got the number one tight end in the country going to UCLA, who Josh Rosen's going to be throwing to, Elise, and they got Cordell Brodus, and they got Tate Martell at quarterback, who they like to call Tate Manziel, just the way he plays with them feet. And they got playmakers all over there on the Gale sideline.
And we're talking about a team that's already scored 199 points in 5 games, if you want to see that offense. And interestingly enough, it's actually a good way to judge St. John Bosco's rest of their season from the early Bishop Gorman season, because Gorman played a lot of California teams: Servite, Centennial, Santa Margarita. Obviously, the closest of those games was the Centennial game, but in the future, we may be able to play that NFL game from the first month where you're kind of like crossing, well, this team beat this team, and this team beat that team, and we might know more about the Braves even from a regular game after they come home from this weekend.
Yes, we will. I mean, Nevada's been beating up on Southern California teams the last few weeks here with, Servite and Centennial and Santa Margarita. But I think Bosco has got to feel pretty good knowing that Servite and Centennial gave Gorman a run for their money, especially the Centennial. They made a key mistake late that led them to lose that game. So that's what they were preaching. I mean, take what you saw in those games and you got to be disciplined. But Southern Cal has played well against the Gorman, so I think Bosco's feeling great that the best team in Southern Cal should be able to do work in Las Vegas.
I've got 2 very quick questions, Chris. The first is, I think everyone saw, because Eric Sonheimer of the LA Times put it out there, that sign that Bishop Gorman held up last week that said, "We want Bosco." You've been around Bosco. Do you think that they saw that? Do you think that motivated them coming into the game?
I absolutely believe that they saw that, and just hearing around that there's kind of been a Twitter silence on Bosco. They don't want no one talking on social media. They just want that quiet. They just want to handle their business. So I'm pretty sure they've seen that, and they're just trying to, keep low-key and go about their business.
Boy, you've made it when, huh?
Yeah, right. You're right, because this is, like Chris mentioned before, these are college problems you're talking about, not high school problems. My second question is, we obviously have seen Bosco raise its profile through sports over these last couple years. I don't really know anything about Bishop Gorman. I've heard a lot about them because they've been elite in basketball and football for a little while. But other than that they're a private school, I don't really know much about the school. I mean, is it big? Is it small like Bosco? What's sort of the profile of the school like, Chris?
So it's the only Catholic high school in southern Nevada. It was founded in 1954, about 56 acres. I don't know if that's big enough for you.
That's a lot.
That is a lot. They're pretty good in athletics. They won 97 state championships in 59 years. In 2014, 38 seniors got athletic scholarships to play at the college level. If you just look at their campus, it does not look like a high school. It looks like a small college. It looks like
No,
those shots of Fertitta Field do look like a college.
No,
they really do.
It doesn't look like the photo that he just brought up. It doesn't look like a small college because Long Beach State is the third or fourth biggest university in California, and they are vastly outpacing Long Beach State. They have a recovery pool. Their weight room is well beyond anything. I mean, it's I would say even it's up there with USC or Oregon. I mean, it's really an incredible facility.
The closed end zone looks like Georgia Tech Stadium.
What we're going to be looking for is that atmosphere. All the coaches I talked to, the ones who went up there last Friday to scout the Gales at the game against Santa Margarita, they said, man, just wait till you see that atmosphere. It's not going to be a high school game, but you're not going to feel like that. So I'm definitely excited to get on campus and see what it's like there.
Well, those are the lucky coaches that got the scouting draw in Vegas, I might want to point out. But let's go back and talk about Bosco a little bit. I mean, we've seen them play some big games recently, won their first football CIF championship. This game's going to be on ESPN, not ESPNU. It's on the big network. Everyone's, going to be watching this game. Bishop Gorman has a ton of hype. I mean, where does this rank as far as the biggest games in program history? Obviously, last year to win championships was very big for that season, but this could be a program-sustaining win if they get it. Chris, I mean, what do you think? I mean, where do you think this ranks for Bosco as far as most important games that they've ever played?
You brought up De La Salle because I think overall that is the top game in the program's history. Just winning that state title, 16-0. That put them on the map in terms of this is a program we need to know, national championship, all that. And you got to remember, Bishop Gorman is still just a preseason game. It's the biggest preseason game we've seen in a long time, but it's still a preseason game before the league starts. So I think with that being said, it's still a pretty huge game. I would put it at number 2. Just because, like you said, if they win here, a lot of people on the East Coast are going to know about, St. John Bosco. They're gonna know about the Braves out west. So I believe that, ESPN and number 1, number 2 national implications do put it up there in the second spot. But I still think De La Salle for them is the biggest game in school history.
It's a fair point. Chris just brought up the rankings. They are 1 and 2 in USA Today right now. So it is worth noting if whoever wins this game, if they do complete an undefeated season, which they both would be heavily favored to do, would be a national champion in one poll or another. So it does have that kind of national level implication, even though it is just a non-league game.
If you're watching on ESPN, make sure you follow Chris Trevino for all of the breakdowns. If you're at a game here in Southern California and want to follow what's happening in that game 6 p.m. on Friday in Vegas, follow Chris Trevino. And if you think that ESPN may have missed one of the plays of the game, Chris might have gotten it. Just have to wait and find out.
It's Undefeated Thursday this week as we've got a couple teams who have not lost going at it, Bellflower and Los Alamitos, and let's see if ththese teams can keep it rolling. For Bellflower, it's their league opener.
Big league opener. My dark horse is making me look pretty smart. Bellflower's 4-0. They're rolling right now, and they're heavily favored in this Glen game at La Mirada High School to, get a great start, go 5-0, and then see what happens in the league.
And Tyler, you mentioned the Griffins. I think we've talked about it on this show before. We really like this team, and we talked about scheduling last week. This is a perfectly scheduled game for Los Al with league right around the corner.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, they've got two very good games coming up. They host San Juan Hills at Vets. They looked great last week, and just see if they can keep that momentum going. And they were without maybe their best player, Denzel Brantley. We'll see if he plays, recovering from an ankle injury. And then it's at Narbonne next week before league starts. Los Al got to get it done. Let's see if they can keep that momentum going as the Sunset favorites right now.
When we talk about the Dominguez Dons, we talk about the stable of running backs, Ford, Hairston, Williams. Gosh, they are good, and they've got a stiff test this week. They're going to hit the road to take on Westlake. We saw this Westlake team take on Poly. Mike, what are those running backs from Dominguez going to have to do to be successful against Westlake?
Well, I think the big thing, if you're looking at the Westlake defense, was not very impressed with them against Poly, but they do have some size up front, both on the offensive and defensive line, more so on the offensive line to protect superstar quarterback Malik Henry. But, yeah, I think it's very possible that Dominguez could come out and do some things offensively. The real test, though, will be when that defense that I know you were very high on goes up against a top-tier quarterback in junior Malik Henry.
They might not see a better quarterback than Henry for the rest of the season.
No, I don't think that they will. It's this is still a Pac-5 defense that Dominguez is going up against. It's going to be a challenge. The important thing is to get positive gains and not get tackled at the line or for loss. You don't have to bust 80-yard runs against this defense. Keep moving those sticks, keep the clock running, keep the ball out of Henry's hands. And for Dominguez, They get a bye after this game, and then they start league against Paramount. So this is a big test at the perfect time to see if they can move to 4-1 here.
They took on Orange Lutheran, went to Orange Lutheran, and lost 33-7 in the opening week. So maybe just an improvement on that score alone can help the Dominguez Dons do something in league in the playoffs.
Well, and it's worth noting Orange Lutheran, a higher-ranked team in the Pac-5 at this point than Westlake. So they've definitely seen this level of talent before, and maybe that'll help them as they go into preparing for the game.
And as far as seeing elite talent, not many teams have scheduled tougher pre-league schedules than Poly and Cabrillo, and now those teams face one another.
It's a
coming
league
off
game,
losses.
Smoke.
It is absolutely a league game, Smoke. Toe was over the line. But this is definitely a get-right game for the Jackrabbits after losing on the road against Corona Centennial.
Well, they hope it's a get-right game. It's a game
That's
where
the plan.
Right, yeah, that is their plan. It's going to be interesting. If you look at the last two times Poly was in this sort of a situation, 2013 against Cabrillo at Vets was a weird game for them. That was a game that Juju got injured. They didn't score in the first half. I mean, it was very... You sort of saw the things that would end up bringing them down as far as offensive troubles in the CIF semifinals in that Cabrillo game. The previous year, 2012... They went into league 1-3. They ended up winning the CIF championship that year, but the shift in momentum started in that Compton game when I'll never forget Jayon Brown literally ripping the ball out of Atarbabe's hands and then running it into the end zone. And the energy and the feeling on that sideline was so electric, you could tell that, it helps when you're struggling, when you're mad about a loss, to be able to go and put up an emphatic win. And I know that that's what they are planning on doing. But for Cabrillo, I'm curious. This isn't just obviously a one-team storyline here. For Cabrillo, they're coming off an 0-4 non-league schedule where Tyler mentioned it. For a team that's 0-4, they played nothing but top teams, and you don't know really whether that helps or not. I don't necessarily think that it did help Cabrillo. I don't think that they're in a better spot now than they were before they played their first game, which is what you want from your non-league schedule. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. It's two teams who really, really need a win. Poly obviously would be heavily favored, but I'm curious to see how the Jags come out in the first league game at home to try and make a statement of their own.
I mean, outside of Bosco, the first 5 games of the season, I don't think Cabrillo, anybody other than Cabrillo, played a harder schedule. And so the last 5 games are not going to look like that. How dejected are they about how tough these games have been and their performance? Can they, get some positive momentum going into the very, very important second half of their schedule? A lot still ahead of them, even if they don't win this game against Paul.
Speaking of get-right games, the Norwalk Lancers haven't had to get right since they lost in the CIF championship last year. Well, they got to this week because they took a drubbing against El Toro, 44-6 last week. Turnabout fair play, I guess, because Norwalk's done 44 to single digits against a lot of teams in the recent past.
Yes, it was very surprising to see the El Toro score. So they're going to try to get right, like you said, against Mayfair this week. League opener, big game for them. Mayfair's kind of down, 1-3. They got their first win last week, but they've struggled to stop the run. So that's got to be a great sign for Norwalk, who loves to pound that rock all day and all night.
Yari about it.
Milliken Compton is a game that I think is more interesting to us than it probably is to your average football fan, just because we've been so closely following Donald Gordon. I think on paper this looks like probably one of the better teams in the Moore League against one of the teams that struggled the most in recent years. But with Gordon, it's a curious thing, because when he played Compton last year, that was kind of his big coming out party. But he's coming off of probably, I'd say, the least productive game of his career. Only gained 72 yards last week against Downey. He gained fewer yards against Poly last year, but he did score a touchdown, and was sort of the memorable thing about that game in many ways. So I'm curious to see what Gordon does if they come out and they're trying to give him big numbers against a potentially inferior opponent like they did with Artesia, or if they're going to sort of meter him out and space him out for league. I'm curious to see what the strategy is.
Interesting note on that game, did not see this coming necessarily from those programs that have been struggling recently. That is the winningest opening matchup in the Moore League, record-wise. Very interesting.
I put that in the preview in the Gazettes because it's also the last 2 teams in the Moore League who have gone winless.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I just sort of had to look up the standings box in my head because I didn't believe you when you said that, Tyler. But yeah, it is. Because Compton's 2-2 right now, Milliken's 3-1. They're 2 of the only 3 teams that are over 500 in the league right now.
Speaking of that Milliken Downey game, I want to go on record and say I love the Vikings rushing attack. Justin Huff, Day Vigilant, they get behind those big tackles going around the outside, but these kids are not afraid to put their nose in whatever is in front of them, and they showed how they can win in winning time at Milliken last week with 2 huge runs when the Vikings faced 1st and 48. Yes, 1st and 48. And they decided to defeat that with the running game. I just love it.
First 48 like a murder case, JJ. And they are hosting the Huntington Beach, who's 0-4, but they are a CIF champion last year. And, still a good test for the Vikings. Can they get to 3-2 before they go into league play? And it is going to be very fun in that SGVL once again.
One of the games that we really look forward to now that this tradition is back on, one of the cooler traditions in Long Beach High School sports, in my opinion, is the Saints Bowl, as St. Anthony hosts St. Mary's, coming down from Canada, where they play a different kind of football. It's Canadian rules.
Alberta, to be specific.
Alberta.
Calgary, Alberta, bro.
But this is, this is an interesting game always. It started back when Dave Radford was the head coach at St. Anthony. They'd sort of come up with this agreement. I believe they're sister schools. I forget the full story, but we did a feature about it last year on how this game came to be. But when do you get to see a high school football team play an international? Well, let me put it this way. All of the other three teams that went internationally to play football games this year from Southern California were all big money Northern Los Angeles County private schools who went to Ireland together as part of a Notre Dame trip. So with the college Notre Dame. So for St. Anthony, for the kids at St. Anthony, a smaller program to get to experience the culture. You talk to kids from another country. The kids from the other country have to learn how to play American rules football, which I think is like a fascinating storyline you never otherwise see. We really look forward to that, and I'm curious to see what happens this year.
This game, second biggest USA-Canada rivalry to ice hockey. Honestly, think about it.
I mean, let's not forget about slope style, or like alpine skiing.
On,
JJ. I mean,
don't they care more about football in Canada than they do about alpine slope skiing?
They definitely do not. But I do think that's one of the things that makes it so interesting is this is not their sport. So for them to come down and see a little bit of the football craziness in America, I think it's really cool. But I mean, Canada, it's cute. It's not really a rivalry.
I'm proving my Canadian ignorance. We
need to get our photographer Steve Carr, who's a Canadian native, on the show to try and stick up for his country because it's just cute to me. It's not really a real rivalry in anything with Canada, frankly.
Curling beefs die hard.
Speaking of undefeateds, Lynwood, a nice surprise over there. 3-0, looking to go 4-0 this week. They play Calvary Chapel over from Santa Ana, a Division 12 team, so they're going to be heavily favored to move there. I saw them last week against their homecoming. Very impressive offensively, scoring a lot of points over there. I think they've scored 150-something points and only given up about 17, so very impressive. Had their homecoming last week. If you like seeing touchdowns, go check out Lynwood on Friday.
Yeah, at first I thought it was strange to have your homecoming so early in the season, but for a program that hasn't had success recently, maybe it is a genius idea to bring some of that alumni back and show them that Lynwood's about exciting football this year.
Absolutely. Last Friday, those stands were packed to the max with purple Lynwood fans, so they're definitely riding behind this team after these last 2 weeks at home. So a third game here will probably add some more fans to this team in 2014.
If you're going to the Wilson Jordan Moore League opener on Friday night, you're going to see two things. One, it's probably going to be weird. Because every time the Panthers go to the corner of 7th Eximino, something weird happens. It's a lot of off-the-record stories. If you want to know that, find us on a sideline.
Something really interesting is going to happen, but we can't tell you about it.
Number two, there's going to be some good young linebackers on the field, and you need to pay attention to them because, for my money, I've seen both of these teams play a few times. They are going to decide it because both teams want to run the ball, and they've got huge question marks at linebacker. Huge question marks, which have then turned into sophomores starting in positions that they originally thought seniors were going to be in. Over at Jordan, they've lost Terry Berry for the week with a knee injury, so they're going to have to look to guys like Misi and Palulu and sophomore Kawan Safola, who last week played really, really well against Aliso Nagel, so John Kane and his defensive coaches are going to put that sophomore back in there and see what he can do against a Moore League opponent. Over at Wilson, they continue to get better on defense week in, week out. They've obviously played some lower competition in the last 2 weeks, but being confident in that Mark Ziegenhagen scheme is almost as important as results. They're getting both right now. They've got a sophomore, Thomas Pretty, who had 10 tackles and an interception last week and got player of the game honors in that victory for the Bruins. They lost a game due to forfeit on Thursday. They won a game on the field on Friday, so they're looking to go 2 straight wins for the first time in a long time for that football program. So no matter what happens, it'll probably be crazy, and it could possibly involve a sophomore. That's it. That's all. There ain't no more. Another episode of Long Beach Sports Talk in the books. That was some good, quick hits we got in. If you've got a take on local high school sports, specifically football, hit us up, obviously on Twitter or Facebook. You can send us an email. You can even leave a comment on any of the stories at Press Telegram and GazetteSports.com.
Get to the websites. In addition to all this great high school football stuff, we've got coverage of the Sumo Championships in the Pyramid last Saturday, which some real quick hitting video, JJ, if you want to check that out. And then on Saturday, after a full night of high school football, we'll be headed to the Harbor to check out LBCC at LA Harbor. The Vikings ranked number 9 in the country. If they can get through this game, which I think we expect they do, they're playing a top 5 team in the nation at home the week after at Mount Sac.
And on the volleyball court, Lakewood continues to play well. Didn't necessarily have the best time at Durango. They also went to Vegas, but they're trying to keep the Moore League sweep streak going. They started off against Poly. That's a storyline to watch. Can Lakewood go through the Moore League again without dropping a set? They've got the talent to do it.
Follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Hit the websites as much as possible. And a big shout out to everybody who helps put together the Grunion Gazette each and every week and the Press Telegram each and every day. For all of them, and for Mike and for Tyler and for Chris and for JJ,
The one who knows.
this has been another episode of Long Beach Sports Talk. And we'll be talking about seeing you guys in the stands this weekend. Take care, y'all.
Peace.